Hi everyone, so I hope you're enjoying the event so far. Maybe we can get a quick round of applause to all the organizers for the excellent job they have done. Thank you. So today we're going to talk about monorepos and especially how to set up an efficient setup for it. So I'm Thomas, I'm a front-end consultant at Zenika, which is a IT services company. It's originally created in France. That's why I have this lovely accent. And I'm specialized in front-end development. I really love performance and accessibility. And I really enjoy learning new things. So currently I'm trying to learn Rust or mostly fighting the compiler. So first, let's start with the big question. What is a monorepo? Maybe you've known monorepos, maybe you are already using one, and maybe you don't know even what it is. So we'll try to answer that question, but first we will talking about something else. What is a repo? Like, a repo means repository. So it's a place where you are storing your code, and initially, before microservices and stuff, we used to work with monolithic apps. So you had one server to handle everything. So it needs to serve your front-end assets. It needs to run the business logic. That would be the back-end code. And then you probably need to fetch some data as well. So you're accessing the databases. And you maybe also have some scripts, like to handle the deployments or every automation task that you may need, and everything is stuffed into one repository, but you only have one application. And to do this, you will be using two important parts. The first one would be Git, or maybe SVN if you're not lucky. It's basically a version control system to help you store all the history of your project. And the second important part of having a repository is probably using some bash script to run deployments and stuff like this. But then there is a complexity, like an evil complexity growing, and it will try to hurt you. So we are trying to fight the complexity, and to do so we'll need some monorepo. But let's have a look at what is this complexity first. So today we have not one app to handle everything, but multiple apps because we have more and more stuff that we want to do with our website or our applications. So we need to have multiple applications, and sometimes they need to communicate with each other. So you may have some multiple service, then a gateway to normalize stuff, backend for front end. Maybe you have multiple front ends that may be working together inside one micro front end, so it may be complex. And then for your front end to be consistent, you need to have a good user experience. You want to have a pretty nice UI, sorry. So your brand is the same throughout all of your apps. Then you have a complex business domain to address, so you may extract some of the core logic into libraries. You may share some class between your front end and your back end if you can write everything in the same language. You may have some library to handle things like the formatting of the front end code, or how to display dates, or maybe internationalization as well. You may have a lot of dependency to handle. Maybe you want to publish some package for open source stuff. You have to deal with security, like imposing some rule set over your repo. And if you're really into automation testing, you can set up some end-to-end testing with tools like Cypress or Selenium. And then you have your deployments. Maybe it's a simple server to deploy. Maybe it's container within a Kubernetes system. And then there is the infrastructure as well that may be stored somewhere. So all of this could be a lot of repository to manage. And that can be a real pain to deal with. There's three things that we won't talk about today. It's how to handle versioning, deployments, and building your application, because this is highly dependent on your existing software, the type of language you're using. So let's imagine that we have that part covered already, and we won't talk about it anymore. So the first way of dealing with all this multiple repository and the complexity of managing the version, the deployment, the code sharing, reusability, it's simply to ignore the problem. Like, okay, I have multiple repository, I can manage. So let's say you have some UI library, you have your front end, you have a backend code, and you have a models folder with some shared class, because everything for this example would be written in TypeScript, so we can share the models on the front end and the back end. Not that it's a good idea, but it's just for the sake of this example. So if we want to update like a button in the design system or the UI library, we need to update the code, and then we need to push the new version. So we need to publish the package into our registry. Then we need to check out the front-end code. We need to pull in the library. And then we can finally release the new version of our project with the updated button. And that's a pretty long workflow only to update a button. So that's a bit annoying. And then if you have something like this, so the front end is using the UI library, and the backend and front end are sharing the same classes from the model package. And if you want to deploy your backend, you need to be sure that you can do so without breaking the front end, because if your backend systems doesn't have the same model as the front end when you deploy, you may break some things. So that's something you want to avoid. So to avoid all of this multiple repository, we can decide to actually handle everything inside one repository. So here it would be called your monorepo. And then inside this monorepo, we can have multiple packages. So you can have your front-end code, your front-end end-to-end test suite. You can have multiple backends, or maybe your backend for front-end, the design system, your models, the internationalization library, some utils folder where you can stuff everything you don't want to know about. Or you can have maybe a more, I would say, clean way to sort everything. So you can create a libs folder who would be responsible of all the libraries that can be published. So design systems, model, utils. And the apps folder with all of the real apps, let's say, and end-to-end test suite, sorry. So to set up all of this, we need some tool. So let's have a look at the different tool we are going to use today. So definitely Git is a good tool. We are taking him in our team. That's a really good tool. I don't think anybody has something to say to be mean with Git, so let's take it. Then we're all using computers, right? I think. So we might need some file system, and having some cache is always a good thing. So let's add some cache to our setup. You may need some build tool as well. So we are probably dependent on your language or framework to build your project. So this would be probably imposed on you. And then since we need to have some configuration, we are probably gonna need to write this configuration somewhere. So since I'm writing TypeScript, I will be using a package.json. And then we have to sort the multiple dependency that we have. And for this, we will need a package manager. So every messy dependency would be cleanly put. So now we come at a point where we need to set up all of this tool to help us with our monorepo. So we'll start with PNPM, which is exactly the same thing as NPM or Yarn, but faster. That's why it stands for Performant NPM. And the nice thing about PNPM is it is mostly a drop-in replacement. You can use PNPM in basically every repo that you have that uses NPM. So you can handle workspace, you can handle your log file to set exact version of your dependencies. You can override some package. You can read the default config file from the npm-rc as well. And if you want to execute some package without installing, you can do so with pnpx, which is basically the same thing as npx. The best part about PNPM is all the additional features. So you can manage the node version. You don't need to use NVM to do so. You have some migration script as well. So if you have your existing package with the package log file already in place, you can just migrate. And the best part is the content addressable storage. So it's difficult to pronounce. So the content addressable storage is a global store. So think of it as the global node module that you have on your laptop. And it uses hard linking and symbolic linking to point to a file somewhere in the system. So instead of copy-pasting everything like NPM does, you can just create symbolic link between your files. And small difference from NPM, it does not use a flat node module structure. So let's have a look at what it means. This is NPM, so every time you want to install something, it will look for the global NPM cache and copy-paste everything into your node module. And then you will have all your dependency into the node module. So here I'm using React, TypeScript, and Express. But then Express also has some dependency. So we need to install it as well. And in that case, what NPM will do is actually copy-pasting the dependency of your dependency. So here Express has a dependency with body parser, and it will need to pull it as well. What PNPM does is a bit more clever. So it creates a .pnpm folder, and it will create some hard links. So React, TypeScript, and Express will actually not be copy-pasted. It will only be a pointer to use the real file in the global PNPM store. And then the node module will only have symlinks to reference those files. So the node module will only contain React, TypeScript, and Express, and not the body parser dependencies. Now comes NX. So NX is built by Narwhals, which is a company that maintains some tool. So initially, it's based on the Angular CLI. It even used to have angular.json as a config file, but not anymore. We used to have we have a migration script if you want to add it into your repo as well. We have some plugins maintained by the Narwhal team, but also from the community. And most of them used to have code generator to help you generate some boilerplate as well. So this is the list of features of NX. We are gonna try to have a quick look at all of them. I'm not sure about the time. So this is the file structure we're gonna use. We have a design system that is used in a Remix application, and we have a utils folder that is not used anywhere, just for the sake of the example. So if I want to run the nx build command, it will actually look for all the dependency of my project. So on the top, it's about the contrast, sorry, but nx actually says one dependent project task succeeded. So I actually launched the build command on my Remix project, and it actually automatically knew that it needed to build the design system first, and then it could finally build the Remix project after that. If I want to build something, well, I can run the nx run many command to launch the build command on all my packages. So every task is taking 2 seconds here because it's an empty project. And if I want to run it again, that would be a loss of computation resource if I need to build it again. So we can probably cache it. And by default, NX does not cache anything in case it doesn't suit your project. But if you apply the cache and you relaunch the same command, it will actually pull every output from the cache. So here the final run of this task took only less than 40 milliseconds. So let's design a feature where you want to update your Remix application. Since all of your packages are within the same repo, you don't want to rebuild everything, and you only want to maybe update only the Remix application, so you don't want to run the test for every other folder. And you can do so easily with the affected command, which will only launch the command on the affected project. So you create a branch, NX will look for your master branch or main branch, look at the differences, and only run the command on the affected packages. And here it pulled the design system for the local cache because there is no changes on the design system, and then he built the Remix application. A nice feature of NX is the ability to use the graph. So the graph command will actually open up a small web page to visualize the dependency within your system. So here you can see that the design system is imported by Remix, but the util folder is not imported anywhere. And if you combine the affected command and the graph command, you can see the changes that you just made. So here, I only have a change in the Remix application. I can visualize that it's the only thing that changed. And here I can have a change in the design system, which, since it's imported in the Remix application, it will affect it as well. With NX, we have, the normal team has a commercial product as well called NX Cloud. It allows you to have a distributed cache between all of your machines. So if you're working on something and then one of your colleagues needs to build the same command, it can actually use the cache from the distributed system of NX. And then so does your CI. So everything can be cached and improved. And then there is the distributed task execution, which is basically like running multiple agents in the cloud to distribute efficiently the computation resources. You have this site called monorepo.tools. It's made by the Narwhal team, so maybe it's a bit biased, but it's a really nice way of comparing all the monorepo tooling that exists today. Is it good from time? I still have a few slides. Yeah, okay. So now it's the return of your happiness, because this is only a tool, but it will bring you some joy. So this is the repo structure that you may or may not have from your existing monorepo. And if not, you can totally configure everything in PNPM. So if you have to have your components into a components folder and your other packages into packages, you can do so, but it's just configuration. You can change it as you want. If you already have a monorepo, you can run the PNPM import command to actually migrate from NPM or Yarn to PNPM. So it's just a one-liner and you're done. And for NX, depending on your repo structure, you may follow the different guides they have. So they are a pretty good documentation to get you started. If you want to do a fresh install, like starting from scratch, you can run the create NX workspace command. Basically, it will ask you some nice question about what do you want to do, like scaffold and things like that. And it will create everything configured for you. Then, if you have an existing monorepo, you can do the installation by using the add NX to monorepo command, and it will try to read your project and set up NX for you as well. You have a lot of plugins depending on what you want to use. So if you're using Angular, React, Vue, there's probably a plugin for it. So all of these are the official plugins, and there is also a ton of community plugin as well. Performance-wise, just a small comparison. On the top, you can see Yarn. So it's a fresh install on a real project. The fresh install from Yarn took 40 seconds, and the PNPM install took only 30. And the space used on your machine is like half, so pretty efficient at managing resource and disk usage as well. For NX, this is a comparison from the creator of NX. So just a large monorepo with a lot of resource to compute, and NX is done like in less than a second, and turbo repo is done in for a bit more than 4 seconds, so 10 times faster here for NX. The documentation of PNPM is quite simple, but it's good. I've never been annoyed by it. And you're in luck because NX just released a new version last week, so they revamped their doc and it's even better now. And do we have some time for the demo? Is it okay? No? Okay.
Hello, hello. Okay, we have around 30 minutes. Just take our time.
Okay.
Yeah.
So here we can try to use the scaffolds command from our tooling. So the first thing I want to do is maybe increase the size of this so you can have a look. Okay, is it good enough? Okay. So the first thing I want to do is actually create a new monorepo. So I can do this by using the create NX workspace. And since I'm using PNPX to install the NX workspace, oh, I forgot to turn on the Wi-Fi. Okay, let me try again. Okay, so since I'm using PNPX to launch the command, NX will actually know that I want to use PNPM, and it will do so without asking me for it. And still no Wi-Fi. Okay, sorry, need to turn this on.
I would ask you to use the milk bottle, but the guy who has the milk bottle like is walking away.
Okay, here it is. So I'm running the create NX workspace, and what NX will actually try to do is to ask me some question about what I want to do. So here I want to use an integrated package. So it's a pre-configured setup from the NX team, and everything would be scaffold for me. Then I can ask him to generate a React application with an Express backend. Then I can try to create some package. So let's call it GeekCamp. The application would be maybe the front end. And we're using CSS. I don't want to connect to NX Cloud yet because I don't want to set it up. But if you want to do so, you can set it up right now. And then it's going to install some dependencies. So it may take some time. It should be faster than NPM. Should be. Yeah, let's blame the network, okay? Okay, so it's creating the workspace. It has installed the dependencies, and it may run the PNPM install command several times. So we'll just have to wait, and then we'll have a nice project entirely set up with everything. It is slower than usual, sorry for that. Okay, so NX has successfully installed everything, so we can maybe have a look at what it scaffolds. Okay, so I'm just gonna try to zoom in a bit and see if that's better. Okay, so I'm not sure I can zoom in, so you're just gonna have to believe me. So this is like the setup that was generated. So we have a main GeekCamp folder, then we have the apps with an API, the front end, even some end-to-end tests have been generated. And then we have some libraries with some model defined inside. So let's come back to this. We'll go into the GeekCamp folder. Okay, so here is my project with everything inside. And now what I want to do is actually run like everything. So I'm gonna use the run many command. And sorry, run. Okay, so this one, I'm gonna run the run many command to serve both the front end and the back end applications. So NX is gonna start everything. Okay, so the serve command has been run for 2 projects, API and front end. So if I go here, should be able to go to localhost. Okay, so here I have my little front end and this welcome to API. So if I go here in the network and I refresh, I can see that this message, welcome to API, come from the actual API on localhost 4200/API. And this is basically a proxy from localhost 3333, okay, and it's on /API. So this is my API, and this is my front end, and everything has been set up for me. So now if I go back here, I stop everything, and we are just trying, please, okay. Now we can try to scaffold some library. So we are gonna need to install some packages, which is it, PNPM. Okay, so we are gonna install 2 packages, one for React and one for Storybook. Should be quick as well. Okay, so I've installed some dependency. Now I can generate some code. So if I run this, okay, so I'm gonna run the NX generate command with the React package to generate a new library. I will call it my new library. And what NX will actually do is it's using the React package to generate some code for me. So it will set up a new library with all the configuration, and it will put it inside our Monorepos so we can use it immediately. Okay. So if we go inside our library, which one is it? Okay, so I'm gonna go inside my front-end code, open the application folder, and then this is like a basic React component. But if I want to use something new, I can just use my new component. So it's called my new, so I have to look at it, my new library. Okay, so this is the new component that got generated. I'm just gonna import it inside my application here, and then here I can probably use like this nice little syntax, so I don't have all these nasty imports. Okay, let's go back here. Let's run the serve command again. And hopefully I did not forget anything. So here I imported the new component and it's already working. I basically did not do any configuration for it, and I can import the component from another library. So it's easy to set up. And what's even best is that we can now create the same configuration for a storybook as well. So if I want to run a storybook command, I can actually generate the configuration for storybook for my new library. So I'm just going to do that. And here again, it's one of the plugins from the NX team that will generate everything for me. I'm just going to select the React application. Everything is automatically generated for me, installed, so I don't have to even think about installing the dependencies. It's storybook, so it's a bit longer than usual. Okay, and now I can just import like already written test page from, oh, sorry, what happened? No timeout? No, I think it's good. And now I can run the start storybook command, which is this one. It should compile the storybook and open it, so we can have a nice documentation page for the component. So here again, nice thing, I don't have to set up anything. I'm just typing commands and everything is configured for me. This is painful because this is the first time, but then if you need to relaunch the task, it would be, you can cache it, so it would be faster next time. But the first time would be probably a bit slow. Okay, let's just wait for maybe a few more seconds, and then I will just cancel it if it's not working. But you have to trust me, it works. Just not today. Yeah. Okay, so I think Storybook is asleep and doesn't want to come out, so you'll have to try it on your own laptop, I think. Okay, so I think I don't have anything else to show you on the Storybook part. So if we go back here, mostly I've told you anything I knew about PNPM and NX. I hope it can help you in your future Monorepo adventures. Here are some sources. I will share the links to the slide later on the Discord. And thank you.
Okay, so I will be inviting Thomas to stay on a bit more. Is there any more questions from like the stage? Yeah, Shri.
Actually, I have been using NPN. I haven't used about PNP. After seeing your slides on egg, but I have some projects in NPN, but I transferred it to PNP and work it out.
I'm repeating so that the stream can hear as well. So, question is, I've been using NPM for a while. How do you transfer and migrate over to PNPM?
Okay, so the nice thing about PNPM, it's only a tool to like pull the dependency. So if you have some library published on NPM or any kind of registry, if it's a private, corporate, and a registry, PNPM will be able to fetch your dependency from any kind of repository. So you don't have to think about, oh, I have some stuff hosted on NPM. It's not a problem because PNPM will actually be able to fetch your dependency from anywhere. Yeah, it's just the CLI to install stuff, and you don't have to think about migrating everything from NPM. So you can use your dependency as you are already using them.
Any questions from like the crowd? Is there any raised hands? Or if you have any questions, just shout out lah. Okay, cool. Give me a while. Let me run over. Yes.
How does Yarn workspaces compared to Monorepos in PNPM?
So it's basically the same setup. In Yarn, you can define workspaces, and it's basically a config in the package.json where you say, oh, you can look at all my sub-projects at this page. And what PNPM does, it's basically the same thing, except the config file is written elsewhere. But if you want to use Yarn to handle your monorepo, you can totally do so. And
any more questions? Any more? Okay, I'll move on to the online questions. So, by Anonymous, any tool suggestion for back-end and front-end if using totally different languages? For example, if a .NET back-end, but Nux for front-end.
Yeah, so if you head over to monorepo.tool, the little website I shared.
Hi guys, can I just like a bit of quiet? It's because like people are listening as well.
Sorry?
No, I'm just like, guys, can you like just a bit silence for like, thank you. Okay, cool.
Yeah,
you can continue.
Yeah, so if you head over to monorepo.tool, the little website I showed you earlier, there's plenty of comparison for like the whole monorepo ecosystem. Maybe I can show you quickly. So if we go to monorepo.tools, okay, so this is the website, and you have like an explanation about what is monorepo, why you should use one, and every other question that you may have. And there is some, if I scroll down here, there's like a comparison of every different tool that you may have for monorepo. So here, just gonna zoom in a bit. If you want to use Bazel, it can do local computation caching. If you want to use Gradle, it can do so. So does Lage. Lerna does not does it. NX does it, and so on and so on. So here you have a lot of like comparison of what kind of tool you may use. So if you want to use NX for something else than Node, you can totally do so, because NX is just calling your build tool. So you will have some package.json for the configuration of NX itself, but that's it. If you want to build some, I would say, .NET or even C++, you can do it with NX as well.
Okay, so another question from Slido by YYK. So YYK says, love monorepos too, but I think monorepo has problems scaling to more teams, different timelines. Have you faced any suggestions to mitigate them?
Have I faced any? I said depends on your organization structure more than the tooling itself. So maybe the issue you encountered with monorepos and maybe team overlapping each other boils down to the way your organization is structured and how you work together, more than the tooling itself. So, but maybe I haven't encountered the particular problem that you have, so I wouldn't know.
So is there no more questions? No more questions. Let's give another round of applause.